US Secretary of State Marco Rubio has expressed uncertainty over Russia's commitment to ending its ongoing war with Ukraine. Speaking at the Munich Security Conference, Rubio stated that they don't know if the Russians are serious about ending the war, as the conflict nears its fifth year. His remarks come despite US efforts to facilitate peace talks, including 2 recent rounds of discussions between Russia and Ukraine, while resulted in a prisoner swap but no significant breakthrough. Meanwhile, US President Donald Trump has urged Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky to act swiftly, suggesting that Russia is ready to negotiate. However, US NATO envoy Matthew Whitaker remains skeptical about Russia's readiness to make a deal. Looking ahead, Ukraine and Russia are set to hold another round of talks in Geneva on February the 17th to the 18th, focused on territorial concessions. We are now being joined by Ben Aris, who's a former Moscow bureau chief for the Daily Telegraph, and he is joining us from Berlin. Thank you so much for joining us here today on NewsX World.
My pleasure.
What does Rubio's comments reveal about the US's confidence or lack of in Russia's intentions towards a negotiated peace deal? Like we know there's been 2 rounds of talks already, not much timetable we've been shown, just the prisoner swap. What do Rubio's comments say about this now?
America is pushing for an end, a conclusion to these talks, a deal to be done. What's changed? Well, there was a lot of progress in December, culminating in a Moscow meeting on December 3rd between the US envoys and Putin, where they basically thrashed out a 27-point plan that the Kremlin largely signed off on. And now we're stuck. On the one hand, Putin's insisting, and he's not going to compromise on this, that that Ukrainians give up the bit of Donbass that they don't control. And on the other side, Zelensky's insisting on ironclad, real security guarantees, particularly from the States. And again, in Munich, he just said again that for those security guarantees to be acceptable, they have to be passed by Congress, which gives them the status of an international treaty. In other words, that Trump is actually going to have to stick to those promises if they're made. And that's where we are. We're stuck between the two. At the last round of talks in Abu Dhabi, Trump team made it very clear the deal needs to be done by June, ahead of the midterm elections in the States, because Trump wants another win going into those elections. He promised that he would end this war in the first week in office. Didn't do that. So he doesn't want to go and fight a midterm elections with basically a failed Ukrainian policy. And I think this is what Rubio is alluding to, that they're frustrated on the one hand that Putin is not making any compromises, but at the same time they're putting enormous pressure on Zelensky to concede, and they want Zelensky to sign off on the peace deal before the security guarantees go through Congress. And everyone's dug their heels in. It's tricky. It's a very tough situation, but if no one concedes, neither Putin nor Zelensky, then the war will just continue, and the EU just put funding in place in order to pay for it for another 2 years.
And is uncertainty about Russia's seriousness a major obstacle to advancing diplomacy or a realistic assessment of Moscow's strategy towards Ukraine?
I don't think it's obstinacy. I mean, I was just listening to the speeches of von der Leyen and Keir Starmer in Munich, and they're saying, look, Russia doesn't want to negotiate, it doesn't want peace. That's not true. The Kremlin's made it perfectly clear that it's willing to stop, provided that Zelensky caves in to their demands. That's where we are. And we could end this war tomorrow if Zelensky agrees to withdraw from the Donbass. So it's a narrative that's coming out, particularly at the European side, because they're frustrated. You could argue they want to see this war end because, it's revitalized NATO, and they haven't been involved in the talks at all, which they're frustrated about because this is a major war in their backyard. But on the American side, they've been very upbeat about the possibility of talks. And moreover, Zelensky himself mentioned this Dmitriev package. What that refers to is Kirill Dmitriev is leading one of the delegates on the Russian side, and they've purportedly, according to Zelensky, done a $12 trillion package of business deals. That's about 5 times the size of the entire Russian economy that involve oil, gas, rare earth minerals, agriculture, tech, nuclear power, a whole smorgasbord of things. And Trump has made it perfectly clear from the beginning that he wants to do business with Russia. So the Europeans and the Americans are both singing from a different music sheet, and the messages then are getting very confused.
And does expressing doubt about Russia's intentions from Rubio's comments, does this risk hardening Kyiv's position or strengthen leverage for the next round of negotiations and talks?
Well, everyone's very, I don't know, they're watching this upcoming meeting in Geneva in a few days. This could be a crucial meeting. Time is running out in order to close a deal. And there's a possibility that one is agreed. Really, I think it comes down to Zelensky as the one that has to make the choice, because Putin, they're winning on the battlefield. They've made more progress in the last 6 months than at any time since the start of the war. Russian economy is on full war footing. It's now producing arms in surplus, so it can supply its men in the field, and it even has enough extra arms to restart arms exports. It just earned $15 billion last year from selling arms again, which collapsed in the last couple of years. So Putin's not in a rush. He believes time is on his side, and if Zelensky refuses to capitulate, which is what we're talking about in effect, then he'll just keep going, and he believes he can win this, take back the Donbass militarily at enormous cost of life, and it'll take another year. Those defenses in the Donbass are very strong. But Putin's prepared to go there. So really it comes down to Zelensky. Is he prepared to fight for another 2 years? Is he prepared to lose more? Hundreds of thousands of men have died. This is causing a demographic catastrophe in Ukraine because of the number of people that are dead and wounded. Or will he tough it out? I don't know. It's up in the air. It's a really, really hard choice for Zelensky. I hope they do decide to end it. I'd hope that the Americans do come through on their security guarantee, because the whole thing turns on that. If Zelensky gets that security guarantee, a real one from the States, then he's secured the borders post-war, and that's his key, because if he doesn't get that deal, then Russia could reinvade any time after a ceasefire is agreed, and effectively Russia holds a gun to his head in perpetuity. But with the security guarantee, he ensures the borders, he ensures the sovereignty of Ukraine, and then they can get on with the job of rebuilding the economy and recovering from this disaster.
Yeah. Thank you, Ben. Don't go too far, as we will be joining back with you very shortly. At the Munich Security Conference, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang